Well, there's a lot of difference of opinion about it, and there's a faction of people who insist that there are different diets for different people. But I think that the evidence is fairly clear that that's not true, and there really is an appropriate diet for humans, just like there's a best diet for cats, dogs, elephants, and any other mammal. And the best diet for humans is one that is plant-based, almost all calories coming from 4 principal food groups: fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. It's low in fat, high in fiber, not very much processed food. None is great, but in today's world, I don't know how realistic that is.
It's almost impossible to design a protein-deficient diet surrounding, a variety of whole plant foods.
But what people need to know is there's never been a case of protein deficiency ever described in the world literature on any natural diet that met the sufficient amount of calories.
Back to 1839 when protein was discovered, it had this incredible reverence associated with it, and it just gained traction. But the evidence is very clear that humans do not need to eat a lot of protein, and when they do, they get a lot of health problems as a result. I mean, human protein needs are just tiny percentage of calories, maybe 2.5–3% of calories. And if you were to eat the lowest protein foods in the plant world, which would be foods like rice, you're at 8 or 9% protein. So you're not going to become protein deficient. But the promoters of the low-carb diets, the promoters of the sports drinks, the food bars, and all these kinds of things insist and market to the public that they absolutely must have more protein. It's just not true.
In practical sense, in reality, the way we humans operate, we can get ideal levels of protein if we just get it from plants. When we consume animal foods to get that protein, if you will, what we're actually doing, we're displacing the consumption of those foods that matter. And the foods that matter are plants.
The amount of animal protein we eat is the problem. In rural China, in Japanese populations, healthier places in the world, people eat a little bit of animal protein, but for economic reasons, it's very, very, very tiny. They use one little piece of meat, they slice it up, and it seasons a dish for 8 people. Here in this country, we have one gargantuan piece of meat. We put it on a plate with a tiny little bit of vegetables. We call that a meal. The problem is that when you eat too much protein of any type, you stress your kidneys, you stress your liver, and when it's animal protein, you increase your risk of cancer. And we see cancer is geographically distributed. The more animal food consumed in a society, the more cancer, more heart disease you get.
Many people decide they want to improve their health by staying away from red meat, and instead they begin consuming more white meats like chicken, turkey, and fish. I always wondered if certain types of meats were really better than others.
People think that they're going to be healthy by giving up red meat and instead eating poultry and fish. Stop and think about this for a minute. What are meat, poultry, and fish? They're muscles of animals. In one case, they happen to move a limb. In another case, they flap a wing. In another case, they wiggle a tail. They're the same. High fat, high protein, high cholesterol, no dietary fiber, high in the food chain, so heavily polluted.
Since I was a kid, I always heard that milk was a very important food, and I consumed a lot of it. I also loved all kinds of dairy products: cheeses, butters, ice creams, yogurts, you name it, I had it all. It took me many years to begin realizing that perhaps that was not such a great idea. But I still wondered, how about calcium? Would I be able to get enough of it from plants?
Well, we have a lot of calcium in dairy, but it's never been a problem to have too low a calcium in a diet.
An orange has 110 milligrams of calcium. All right, so if you're trying to take in 1,500 milligrams a day, that doesn't sound like so much, but when you're only trying to get 500, it sounds pretty good as a percentage of your daily intake.
Milk is a healthy food for calves, for baby cows. I mean, milk is for babies, literally. I mean, we're the only species that drinks milk of another species, and then the only species that drinks milk after weaning into adulthood. Why?
One of the hardest things for people to give up is dairy. and they're sometimes really resistant to it. So one of the things I tell people is, well, why don't you look at the evidence and then decide? Because I've always said taking control of your health is not doing what I say instead of what other people say. Taking control of your health is looking at the information and making a conscious choice about what you want to do.
Dairy products I describe as liquid meat. They're basically just like red meat, high fat, high cholesterol, no fiber. In fact, they may be worse than meat.
The only reason people think we need extra calcium is because a few decades ago, scientists, they raised the bar on how much calcium we needed. That in turn was influenced by the dairy industry. What they're really saying is we're not drinking enough milk, because that's what the dairy industry wants us to say. When in reality, if you look at the relationship between how much calcium that people consume in different societies as it relates to, let's say, osteoporosis, the bone disease, the higher the calcium intake, the higher the risk of osteoporosis. No one wants to hear that, but that's what the data show.
Eggs are the most concentrated source of dietary cholesterol in the average person's diet. And dietary cholesterol can lead to an increase in blood cholesterol levels, which is a leading risk factor for our #1 killer of men and women, heart disease.
Eggs have kind of the same issue as dairy in some ways, because commercial eggs are from chickens that are commercially raised. So if you ever knew how they were raised, it's horrible. You would never go near it, one. So it's disgusting. But aside from the disgustingness of it, commercial chickens are fed antibiotics to keep them bigger. It makes them bigger, cephalosporin to be specific. They are fed feed that's usually corn and soy, genetically modified. So Bt toxin, corn, Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready soy. So those are affecting, again, the bacteria and the microbiome of the chicken and then of you, because you're ingesting it, it's bioaccumulative. A commercial chicken egg is mostly omega-6, it's not omega-3, so it's a horrible polyunsaturated profile. And that's, the least of the problems, because like I said, you've got the residue from glyphosate and Bt toxin and pesticides. If you're eating meat, you're eating commercial meat, and you're worried about switching to plant-based diet and worried about the pesticides on the produce, you're being ridiculous, because you're getting a fraction of the pesticides by eating the vegetable that you can mostly wash it off. Remember, you can soak your vegetables and use a wash to get pesticide residue off. You cannot wash the pesticide off of the hamburger meat you're about to prepare.
It's unquestionable that men think that they have to eat a lot of protein, and that eating a plant-based diet may not be really masculine. But I'll tell you what's really not masculine is erectile dysfunction. If you want to be virile, if you want to have a great masculine life, eat a plant-based diet. If you do it right, there are no health issues. In fact, the side effects are you're going to lose weight, you're going to look better, you're going to have more energy, you're going to avoid most of the common degenerative conditions most of the time, you're going to have a longer life and a healthier and a better life. That's about what happens when you do this. So there isn't a downside.
The cause of most of our diseases and the cure is within anybody's reach who gets the knowledge. The problem is they have to make some change. That's a small problem. The real problem is there's no money in doing the right thing. There's money in selling you statins and blood pressure pills and powerful arthritis drugs and laxatives and antacids. That's where the money is. So that's where the education goes.
We have to shift the dollars from expensive procedures and shift it more towards education, teaching people, showing them about their disease and why it's there, and teaching them the things that they can do day in and day out that would positively impact that disease and possibly even get it certainly improved and maybe even reversed in some cases.
You can expect artery disease to stabilize and reverse and the symptoms to go away. You can expect the type 2 diabetes, if it's really type 2 diabetes, to be cured 100% of the time with diet change and associated weight loss. You can expect the arthritises to improve and go away and be cured many times if they're inflammatory arthritises. The bowel problems, all the way from indigestion to constipation to colitis, you can expect a cure when you direct your attention to the cause of the problem and you fix it.
Big question that we get all the time is, how can I get my kids to eat better? I think every parent wants their kids to eat healthy, and it's difficult, especially when everywhere you look there's a fast food restaurant or a processed food snack that is being marketed towards children. And the first thing that I always say is you have to lead by example. As a parent, you can't be eating lousy foods and expect your children to eat healthy because you tell them to. So you have to walk your walk. That's number one. The second thing is I encourage all parents to make the preparation of meals and the shopping of food inclusive with their children. The more you can bring your kids into the fold, the more they're going to develop an emotional attachment to where their food comes from, how it's prepared, and the impact that it's having on their health. So at our home, we serve plant-based foods all the time. We don't have any animal products here. But when my 10-year-old daughter goes to a birthday party, she's surrounded by, Chicken McNuggets and birthday cake and all of that. And we don't say to her, you can't eat those foods. We say, have a great time at the birthday party and make the right choice for you. And that doesn't mean that she always makes the right choice. That way you are empowering them. This is a lifetime we're talking about. This is a long road ahead. So it's about getting your children to think consciously about their own choices so that when they reach the age of maturity, they are informed and educated and prepared to be responsible stewards of the planet and responsible stewards of their own bodies.
I think that every human being wants to do good. I think that every human being in their core wants to do what's right. And I think that if we look at it and we say, you know what is it that I can do today to make the environment better, to make my health better, and to have compassion for animals, for our fellow creatures. What is it that I can do today? I can start on the path to a plant-based diet.